This is the Persistence of Vision podcast.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Persistence of Vision podcast. I'm Clint Till, and I know what you're thinking. The world definitely needs another podcast. I am a huge podcast nerd. I've been listening to podcasts for probably the last 15 years, and for a while I've been thinking about getting into podcasting, but really didn't know where to start. I didn't really know if I had anything to offer that people would find interesting or worthwhile to listen to. And that was the same thought that I had as I was going into writing. I have been sending out a weekly newsletter for a long time to, a subscriber list. And for a while, it was really just a curation of things that I found online, articles that I had been reading centered on the creative industries, film production, video production, marketing, advertising, photography, anything that I came across that kind of sparked my interest. I'd bookmark it, I'd put it into this weekly digest, and I would send it out into a newsletter. But I really wanted to figure out a way that I could write, something personal, but I really didn't know what that was. Then I started to think about all of my own personal experiences in my career. I have been in video production for almost 25 years now, and I've had a lot of starts and stops along the way. I've learned a lot of valuable lessons. I've made some mistakes. I've had some successes. I've had a lot of failures. And so I wanted to start writing from my own experiences, these personal short stories that are sometimes humorous. They're sometimes tragic in a way, when you see the mistakes that I've made. But in every one of these, I wanted to have some sort of application at the end. Like, what did I learn from it? And perhaps by reading them, you can then start to glean some understanding about maybe your own life and your own career. And kind of like the parent, the dad who says, now I'm telling you this so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. I'm a dad. I know that I've probably said it to my kids. I'm sure you've probably heard it from your mom or your dad in the past as well. And so that's kind of the essence of my stories where I'm writing over at Substack, clinttill.substack.com. And not only am I trying to help other people, but I'm also in a way trying to come to terms with my own life and my own career. And it's been therapeutic in a way to write these stories and reflect on the choices that I made and the things that I've learned and try to find what good came of what seemed to be a bad situation at the time. And so when it came time to name this newsletter, these collection of stories, I decided to call it Persistence of Vision, which is also the name of this podcast, Persistence of Vision. So why that name? Well, it has kind of a double meaning for me. First of all, persistence of vision, for those of you that don't know, persistence of vision is a term used to describe how motion pictures work. It's the optical illusion that makes movies possible. It's this physical notion that our eyes can still perceive an image for a moment, even after the image itself has disappeared. So if you flash an image before your eyes and take it away in a split second, your brain retains that image for just a moment. So then when you string together 24 images per second or 30 images per second, you start to put them back to back to back. Persistence of vision gives that illusion of movement. And that's what makes motion pictures possible. And so the title Persistence of Vision refers to my career choice. It refers to this choice I've made to work in video production. But also, persistence of vision encapsulates the purpose of why I write and the purpose of why I'm making this podcast. It's to share the lessons that I've learned and that others have learned through their own persistence in working in a creative field. The persistence to see things through, the persistence to maintain your vision even when things go sideways and even when things don't work out the way you initially thought. And so as I started to think about these stories, I was writing them, I was sending them out, every week, pretty regularly. And I was surprised. Honestly, I didn't think that I would have enough stories, personal stories, to sustain this thing for very long. But here I am, about a year and a half later, and I'm still writing. But I thought, why not expand this beyond my own personal story and start talking to other people that are in a creative field. And so what better way to do that than through a podcast series where I can sit down and have conversations with people. And that's what this podcast is going to be. But in the meantime, go to clinttill.substack.com. You can subscribe there. You can also subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. But to start us off, I wanted to introduce myself, introduce the purposes of what I'm trying to do with both my short stories and this podcast, but then tell you a little personal story to get us started. This story is called Down Goes Frazier. I felt great about my pitch. Now all that was left was the waiting. I just met with a business owner to discuss a video project, and the meeting couldn't have gone better. It was just the opportunity I needed in my young career to really get things off the ground and moving in the right direction. I kept my fingers crossed, hoping that he would decide to hire me as his video producer. For the past couple of weeks, I had been writing and preparing everything I needed for this meeting: the creative brief, the storyboards, script ideas, the budget, my vision. I was young, but I was very eager. Only 18 months previous, I'd made the decision to give up a steady paycheck in what was a very demoralizing environment to go out on my own as an independent video producer. But the two clients I lined up before I made this leap of faith didn't have any other work for me after the initial videos were delivered. And I knew I didn't want to be an event videographer for the rest of my career. What I really wanted was to build up a small video production house, about 4 to 5 team members, where we could serve, a middle tier between big budget companies and one-man band low budget options. And this potential client that I had on the hook was, in my mind, that entry point into making that goal a reality. Well, I can't remember exactly how long it was between the pitch meeting and that phone call, but I finally received the news that I was hoping for. The client had hired me. I got the job. And I immediately went to work. I presented a contract to the client with all the specifics. I got my deposit. That was money that was going to help me to rent the necessary gear, hire the cast and crew, hire a graphic designer to help with the artwork and the packaging on the back end. It was a time of excitement, creativity, and just that feeling of positive anticipation of what was possible. Flash forward to several months later, I'm at a high school football field. I was there unloading my camera gear for another job. I was feeling good. I had been hired to shoot a marching band competition, nothing glamorous. But I was in high spirits because it's a few days prior to this job, I had mailed, this was a long time ago, mailed the video to my client who gave me my first big break. And I was extremely proud of how it turned out. Now all I had to do was wait for the kudos, my final check, and that rush of new clients that was sure to follow. All those businesses that were going to be busting down my door to hire me to produce their videos. I was halfway up the bleachers at the football stadium with my gear, heading towards the press box. My phone rang, and it was my client. He decided to forego any of the usual pleasantries and got straight to the point, and punches, I can assure you, he did not pull. The onslaught was swift and disorienting. He threw around words like terrible and awful. What is this? Is this some kind of a joke? These words and these phrases, it was like a right hook, hitting me in the boxing ring. I staggered around trying to stay upright amidst this ferocious beating that my emotions were taking. And then he landed the knockout blow to me. He said that he showed the videos to his staff, and they laughed because they were so bad. Oh man, my self-esteem hit the canvas with incredible force. The referee moved in to start the count, but there was just no way I was going to recover. It was a KO clinic among KO clinics, minus the ear biting. My mind raced, and then the negativity sets in. It starts to spiral out of control. He hates it, and I'll never be able to fix it. He'll ask for all of his money back, and I've already spent it on cast, crew, gear, my pay. Then he'll badmouth me to everyone he knows. Word of mouth will get around town. No one will ever hire me again. How am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to make ends meet? How am I going to get this business going? It's dead in the water before it even got started. And so in a matter of minutes, I had just mentally thrown in the towel. I listened to him as he ranted, I mean, this was not just a dissatisfied client. I mean, he was legitimately angry. And now it was my problem. And I'm in my 20s. This is my very first experience with anything like this. And my stomach turned. So somehow I managed to regain some composure. I apologized profusely. I assured him I would make it right, whatever it took. And then I discussed next steps. What can I do? What do we need to do to move forward? How can we make this better? And I tell you, what came next was extremely difficult for me. I went through revision after revision. He was calling and texting constantly. He was reviewing every little thing that I did. And I worked as hard as I could to recut everything into something that he would approve of. I had to sit in on phone calls with him, listening to him pick apart my work, making angry demands, threatening to withhold money. Of course, I spent way more time on that job than I had budgeted originally. And I lost money throughout the process, not only on that project, but on other potential jobs. I mean, this was just me. I was a one-man band trying to make a business. And there were other jobs that I couldn't accept because I was busy trying to fix this one. So the more time I spent on this one client's work meant it was less time for me to go out, generate new business, or to field calls from other potential interested parties. It was awful. It was demoralizing. It took a lot of damage control, but I finally presented the client with a product that he approved of. And I think to this day that we'd ended on good terms. At least I would like to think so. But I learned quite a bit through that struggle. First, relationships. Difficult clients force you to communicate, to find out what went wrong and where, to manage their expectations, to negotiate, to find solutions. We all hate to have the difficult clients, the difficult people in our lives, but sometimes they force you into resolving conflicts. They force you into making your own work better. They force you into learning things that are terrible lessons to learn at the time, but you're thankful for them on the back end. So those clients help you to learn what it takes to get people to hire you again, and most importantly, to recommend you to others. Secondly, I learned a lot about contractual agreements through that whole process. As a freelancer, you often have to take on several different responsibilities. Sometimes this includes drafting of your own contracts between yourself and the client. A difficult client, they're going to expose loopholes in your contracts. And so those situations force you to reevaluate the wording of your agreements for future jobs. Difficult clients will bring to light those seemingly little details that you overlooked. And, by all means, consult an attorney before you start drafting up contracts for your own business. And thirdly, these difficult clients, this situation specifically helped me to think about alternative solutions. When someone hates what you've presented, it forces you to think about your work from another perspective. You have to start from scratch. You have to think creatively about how you can rescript, reshoot, re-edit. How does that vision that you originally had, how does it change? And will you be willing to change to meet the client's needs? And I believe that when you can develop the ability to execute the creative in a variety of ways, your work is going to be better off in the long run. So despite the problems I had on this job, I now believe it helped me to think more critically about my own work and create better videos. But it isn't fun. It's not fun when you have to deal with a difficult client who constantly says no to everything you present. It's frustrating when your client can't seem to make up his or her mind about graphics, music, the tone, the pacing of the video, or the shot selection. And it's not very encouraging, I know from experience, when you have to look back at your timesheet and see that you've invested way more time on a project than you ever thought you would, and you've lost out on that money. But if you handle the situation with patience, understanding, and a positive attitude, and you manage to navigate to the other side safely, I think you'll find that you'll be able to withstand the haymakers that may come from a future client the next time that you step into the ring. That was the story. Down Goes Frazier from the Persistence of Vision Substack newsletter at clinttill.substack.com. And that's the type of story I've been sharing. And that's the type of stories I want to continue to share through this podcast. So I hope you'll stick around. I hope you'll click subscribe. I hope you'll tell others about what I'm doing here. And join us next time when I talk to some other filmmakers about their experiences and the lessons they've learned in their careers. And that's it for the Persistence of Vision podcast.